Hi everyone. Week 11, unbelievably, we're looking at sustainability in the marketplace and the workplace. And I decided to include in week 11 a focus on production and supply chains. Supply chains have been a primary source of focus for corporations seeking to demonstrate their sustainability credentials for a host of reasons. Nike, for example, have done a lot of supply chain work because of media exposés some years ago, as you probably remember, on issues around child labour and the general poor conditions of some of their factories in Southeast Asia. Apple, too, more recently have been under the microscope because of the sweatshops in Guangzhou, where they make a lot of their iPhones and other products, and also for more positive reasons, perhaps, or obviously with some spillover on suppliers. Large corporations have focused on supply chains because there is a great opportunity for cost savings and also to ask their suppliers to step up in terms of sustainability because it enhances that organisation's brand. So, for example, Woolworths and Coles, who are essentially just shop windows for other people's products, have put a lot of pressure on their suppliers to look at issues of sustainability. Although nowhere near as much as supermarkets in other jurisdictions around the world, Westpac have a very comprehensive supply chain policy that demands very high standards of delivery, and other big global organisations are doing a lot with suppliers because suppliers through their activities can reduce energy and waste, so packaging on products, for example, and hence costs for their large corporate customers. They can reduce the amount of water and energy in their products and hence reduce their costs. So the supply chain is a very obvious place for corporations to focus on to build their sustainability reputation. So this week's learning objectives are to look at environmental expectations on businesses in terms of production and supply chains. We'll look at a couple of well-known models for production and supply chains. We'll look at eco-efficiency, so what eco-efficiency means and how it can enhance both environmental performance and profitability. And we'll talk a bit about businesses that have embraced eco-efficiency. We'll also look at life cycle analysis and life cycle assessment. So we talked a couple of sessions ago about this cradle-to-cradle design, and life cycle assessment is very much akin to cradle-to-cradle, where the impacts of a product are assessed over that product's life cycle. So, for example, if we look at a typical white good, I live in Orange, we have an Electrolux factory, at least for a few more years, and Electrolux makes refrigerators. So if we think about the life cycle of a refrigerator, where is the impact? Where is the environmental impact? Well, in fact, 97% of the environmental impact of a refrigerator is in its usage, not in its production. So whilst production is key, and there's a strong focus by refrigerator manufacturers like Electrolux on using recycled plastics, on minimizing the toxicity of chemicals and refrigerants used in the assembly of a refrigerator, and also the reuse of metals and other things, because not only does it minimize landfill, it reduces their costs. But despite that, 97% is in the usage when you and I turn on our refrigerators and draw down nasty fossil fuel generated power from our archaic transmission network. So we'll talk a bit about life cycle assessment and assessing products over their entire life cycle, and we'll look at some emerging production concepts as well. So look, the reading, as always, Moscato do a pretty good job on this, perhaps a little briefer than other chapters. I've given you a couple of readings which I hope will reinforce some of the thinking around supply chain. So an article of a recent announcement by General Mills US-based food manufacturer who have announced that they are looking to source half of their raw materials sustainably by 2020. So what does sustainable sourcing mean? Well, we don't really know. Sustainability means different things to different people and different things to organisations, but probably looking at working with farmers in developing countries, akin to the fair trade perspective that you gained in earlier modules, looking at how they can protect those farmers, pay them a fair wage, ensure that they're there for the long term, so building long-term partnerships, and making sure that they're avoiding the destruction of natural environments, maybe rainforests and the like. There's also an example of a corporate responsibility and sustainability report from Olam, which is a very large global agribusiness, looking at what they're doing to safeguard sustainability in their supply chain. I've also given you a couple of short readings from other businesses. One on Renault, the Renault Nissan now, the car manufacturer, and how it's driving down waste out of its supply chain. The reflection this week is on sustainable sourcing, and I've asked you to look at two food companies or food-related issues. Looking at the Marine Stewardship Council, the Marine Stewardship Council has started to create a brand around seafood, and essentially through a series of symbols communicating to the consumer the sustainability or not of particular seafood. So we know, for example, that tuna, redfin tuna, are severely under threat through overfishing, and so the branding is designed to guide the consumer to eat only fish that is sustainably sourced, whether that be naturally in the oceans or more typically through the ever-increasing number of fish farms. There's also an article on Macca's, the company we all love to hate, and how they are going to deliver sustainable beef to all customers by 2016. And again, some might argue that sustainable beef is an oxymoron. We know that beef is a very high rich protein food. That making Macca's beef consumes a lot of natural resources and a lot of energy, and part of the reason why emissions are high is because we in the West are living off a very high protein diet. And so whilst mung beans and veggies may not be everybody's preferred food, we do have to reassess the balance between protein-rich sourcing and the efficiency of growing fruit and veggies. So look, some food for thought there. The case study and weekly discussion forum this week, and also for your learning journal, looks at workers' rights and a report on stopping child labour, which I thought you might enjoy as a supply chain issue, not least because it constantly re-emerges in the press. We've seen it with IKEA, we've seen it with, as I said, Nike, we've seen it with a lot of Australian clothing brands who are sourcing product from Bangladesh, and it was highlighted last year with the big factory fire in Bangladesh and how a lot of Australian and other Western companies were not enforcing fire regulations, and hence many people died and others were badly burned in that fire, and workers received little or no compensation. So look, this week is trying to flesh out some of those issues that are related to sustainability in the supply chain, both environmental sustainability, but social and economic sustainability as well. And the textbook looks at some interesting models for sustainable production and supply chains. I hope you enjoy this week. It's a great area of study. As I said, it's a very strong focus for businesses across Australia and indeed around the world. And it has a big impact on Australian producers, because producers are downstream from the supermarkets, and the supermarkets are making demands of producers in terms of the nature and the type the nature of production and the type of food that they put on our dinner tables. So very topical, and of course we have broader issues around sustainable sourcing of food, etc., etc. So very topical, and I hope very interesting for you. Enjoy the week.